Hey, this is Nicolosi. In this video, I'd like to explore new digital distortion modules introduced in Mela 4.6. Rather than using them to create musical examples, I'll go through their technical details and explain how they work. Hopefully, you'll find it helpful in your music making. In this simple IUM session, I have a single instance of Mela whose output is going through an instance of the ProQ plugin. It will help us observe what's going on in the frequency domain. We'll use it to see how various types of distortions transform a simple sinusoid into a more complex sound. These modules all introduce aliasing, meaning the harmonics introduced by a distortion module won't be harmonically related to the fundamental frequency of the input signal. But this is part of the appeal of these effects. In Mela itself, I have a sinusoid oscillator with fixed frequency. It's continuously being processed by the distortion modules. At the moment, distortion parameters are set to their default values, and therefore we're not seeing anything else other than one peak in the frequency domain representing the oscillator's frequency. All three distortion modules have graphs that show how a sinusoid with a unity amplitude would be transformed in the time domain based on the parameters of the modules. The Degrader module distorts the audio signal by reducing its bit depth and sample rate. The bit depth, represented by the bits parameter, indicates how many bits will be used to represent the amplitude of a signal. Reducing the value increases the noise floor of the signal. At 1 bit, it reduces to a bipolar square pulse waveform with a lot of aliasing. If I switch the waveform parameter of the oscillator to bipolar square pulse with a shape set to around 63% and bypass Degrader, you'll see it has a similar frequency spectrum with a lot less aliasing and has no noise floor. The clock parameter indicates the number of samples used per second to represent the audio signal. Reducing it causes aliasing. Using it on drums or modulating it creates interesting sonic results. Now let's look at the rectifier module. The rectifier parameter controls how the negative portion of the signal is transformed. At 50%, the negative portion is reduced to 0, introducing harmonics to the signal, and at 100%, the negative portion is fully inverted. This causes the fundamental frequency to disappear completely. Notice how on the spectrum analyzer there appears to be a big bump at 0 Hz. This is the DC offset introduced by the asymmetric distortion. I can enable DC blocker to remove this, as it's needlessly eating up the headroom. Note, if you want to create a half or full wave rectified sinusoid signal with even lower aliasing, you can just use the VA oscillator's built-in waveforms. Now let's talk about Clipper. It offers 4 algorithms for clipping an audio signal when it goes above 0 decibels. When the signal's amplitude exceeds this threshold, the hard clip algorithm reduces the amplitude to match the threshold value. The higher the drive, more aliasing is introduced to the signal. In fold mode, when the signal's amplitude exceeds the threshold, it gets reflected down. If the reflected signal reaches 0, the remaining is reflected back up, and so on. The rep mode is the most extreme of the algorithms, as it introduces discontinuities in the signal. When the signal's amplitude exceeds the threshold, it wraps around and starts from 0 again. Lastly, the soft clip is the most musical sounding, as it starts to slowly saturate the signal even before reaching the threshold. To make things interesting, With the rectifier's DC offset, I can introduce asymmetry in the signal before reaching the soft clipper. And of course, I'll filter out the DC from the output. Okay, we've covered most of the features of these distortion modules, but the real fun starts by getting creative and experimenting with modulating these parameters. That's all for now. If you enjoy using Mela, leave a review on the App Store. For any questions or feedback, post a comment below. See you next time.